Our GothCast is associated with the Belfry Network.
Yep.
And that is a website, basically a network of podcasts that relate to Gothic culture, and they also link to a whole bunch of different blogs and YouTube shows, and basically have anything that would interest somebody who's into the Goth subculture.
Yeah, so it's a really good resource for people who are looking for Gothic content online, whether that be podcasts or blogs or video channels.
Yep.
It's really a good place to find a lot of good content that's all kind of brought together. And it's run by a very nice man, Daniel Ford, known as the Count, on Cemetery Confessions.
Yep. Great podcast, by the way.
Yeah. Gotta say, it's been a pleasure working with them. They definitely have some good content on there, so we would recommend that you guys check it out.
Yep. Welcome to GothCast, episode 22. I'm Dr. Sanders.
And this is Robbie Gore.
And today we're going to be talking about the band, The Birthday Party. It's a little weird because it's The Boys Next Door and The Birthday Party are the bands that we're talking about today, but what you kind of need to know is they're sort of the same thing.
Yeah, so when The Birthday Party formed, they originally formed under the name Boys Next Door, and their first album was released under that name, was entitled Door Door, before they changed their name to The Birthday Party. But what's most important to note about this band, which I'm sure many of you know, but for those of you who don't, is that it is Nick Cave's first musical appearance.
Yeah, and that's really why, we're covering it. Not only did this band actually have some relation to Bat Cave and, goth subculture anyway, and was very influential, and you'll actually see that when we talk about some of these albums, but it is sort of a interesting spot. Nick Cave sits in a very weird spot in Gothic culture.
Yeah, he's not exactly considered goth himself. However, he's widely embraced by the Gothic community and has influenced a lot of Gothic bands. And he generally, a lot of his, particularly more of the stuff that he would do with the Bad Seeds and some of his later stuff, had a lot of really dark influences that really kind of appealed to the Gothic community.
Yeah, that's one thing I think is really important to note about Nick Cave's career and the Birthday Party albums, and less so with the Boys Next Door album, but is that these albums have a very dark, creepy tinge to them and definitely touch on that kind of darker side of life. And while most people would classify them as closer to punk rock or to like post-punk movement, that doesn't mean that these albums should be excluded from their influence in goth culture.
Yeah, certainly not. They may not be exactly like straight Gothic records, but they definitely are records that had a huge role in the Gothic community and that many Gothic people listen to, and that you will always see, people citing as an influence.
Yeah, and there's also kind of a thing that's important to mention about these group of albums, because we're doing the first Boys Next Door album and then all of the Birthday Party albums, at least the official ones.
Yep.
The thing about it is you kind of got to put into context when these albums were released. And a lot of people think that these albums were released maybe a little bit earlier than they were. But you got to keep in mind, the Boys Next Door, their first album came out in 1979.
Yeah, bands formed 1978. Yeah. First album comes out next year.
And all the rest of them are actually released, in
1 year after each other.
Yeah, so a lot of people see these as earlier albums that kind of influenced, like Bauhaus or that kind of sound. But they actually were coming out side by side with a lot of these famous albums.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why some people put a little bit of distance between, say, the Birthday Party and, Nick Cave's early recordings to goth, because, unlike Joy Division, they didn't come out concurrently. Like Joy Division was kind of a little bit before a lot of the goth bands, and then the Birthday Party was a little more, at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that a lot of Gothic bands would influence Nick Cave, as he pretty much drew influence from most styles of music, because a lot of his work seems to be a blending of genres, whether that's jazz and punk and post-punk and all these different things.
Yeah, he's pretty much touched on everything.
Yeah, but it makes sense that to not necessarily group him as being an influence on Gothic bands when he came out, concurrently with them. And I would dare say that he's probably influenced by a lot of them and probably respected a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of our preface to these recordings and why we think that they're relevant. And I think, after giving these albums a listen, I really think that if you kind of break down the elements and a lot of the content of it, it definitely does fit in with a lot of things that goth culture appreciates.
Definitely.
And
especially the lyrical content.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll see, especially on the later two albums that we're going to talk about, they definitely have that kind of creepy, eerie, sort of a very unique sound. And
yes.
Yeah, let's get on with it.
All right. So first album we have up is Door Door. And so this is released while the Birthday Party are still going by the name The Boys Next Door. It's released in 1979. It's their debut album. This album is really kind of like the starting point for this band. It's not a perfect album. However, I think it does a lot of cool things and touches on a lot of cool subjects and cool genres. And I feel like they're really just kind of experimenting and trying to figure out what their sound is going to be.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the experimentation side of this. It's pretty much the most poppy sounding thing that Nick Cave, I think, has ever done.
Yeah.
Pretty close. I mean, some of his stuff definitely has a lot of melody, even, his later recordings and solo stuff. And Bad Seeds, I think that is very melodic.
Yeah.
A lot of it more than a lot of people would give it credit for. This is definitely kind of split album.
Yeah, so you have some very melodic songs on this record, and then others that almost kind of feel more like very punk songs or very post-punk songs.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. In fact, the first two songs on here, The Night Watchman and Brave Exhibitions, super poppy sound, and I actually really like it.
No, I would say that those two songs are probably my favorite song aside from Shivers.
Of course.
Which I know everybody loves, but it's hard to debate that it's one of the best songs on the album.
Yep.
I would like to clarify that when we say poppy, we don't mean like it sounds like an Avril Lavigne record or something. It's just definitely a more melodic song structure, and it's less avant-garde.
Yeah, and that's obviously coming from, we're talking from the perspective of Nick Cave.
Yeah.
Like Nick Cave, if you guys listen to Grinder Man or anything like that, like he definitely is kind of out there.
Yeah.
Like if you're a fan of him, you would know that he definitely approaches music in a different way.
Even some of the Birthday Party album stuff that we're going to talk about today is going to be pretty out there.
Yeah. For this one, there's definitely a collection of songs that are more basic sounding. It's mostly the front end of the album and, of course, Shivers.
Yeah.
And like I said, I do like it. I think that it's actually done pretty well.
I agree.
It's done in a very basic way, but the way that it's recorded and the way everything sounds together, it actually fits really well. Like sometimes whenever you have a band's earlier albums and they're trying maybe something different, like a lot of people criticize like Ministry's first album.
Yeah.
Because they say, oh, it's so different than what came next, and they don't do it as well as their heavier stuff. Which I disagree with.
When you're talking about like maybe The Cure's first record.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just an album later, they are doing something different, and you're like, okay, well, this is way better than that. But these pop songs on here, I actually think work super well with their dynamic. I really
agree.
Although they are, I'll say it, they're pretty basic. The vocal melodies and the voice that we know from Cave is not really present on this album.
No, not at all. But I do want to give it some credit in that it's still a Nick Cave song.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think that he's usually such a bellower and he's so aggressive.
I know where you're coming from with that. Yeah,
exactly. And then on this, it's a little more straight-laced.
No, definitely.
They were probably trying to appeal to some specific audience that maybe they weren't trying to later.
Perhaps, and maybe, I mean, it's Nick Cave's first album being released. There's a good chance that he just hadn't really found what his voice was yet.
One of the things I do have to say about this, and it's a very distinct sound on guitar from Rowland Howard.
Yes.
And that's what most people associate with the Birthday Party sound and the early Nick Cave sound. But on this particular album, he's actually only on guitar for pretty much the second half of the album, tracks 6 through 10. So 10 songs, first 5 are, and actually some of the overdubbing and stuff. Mick Harvey had done the guitar, and he also does the piano on this album, and 2 totally different guitar sounds. Now, Rowland Howard, I'm gonna say it right off the bat, and this may be pretty controversial. I have never really liked Rowland Howard's guitar, and I mean the way that it sounds, and I've said this on a number of different episodes that we've done. I really prefer a fuller sounding guitar. I don't really like that kind of punk influence, really trebly, really tinny guitar that sits on top of a really good rhythm.
No, I agree with you. I'd wondered if we would have any contention over this, but I have to say that I don't think it breaks the record, but at the same time, I would have liked a guitar sound that was a little more full, because it especially stands out on songs like Shivers, where you have like this beautiful kind of ballad, and this guitar is just, it's pretty piercing, and that's probably one of the tracks that it's the least piercing on, but it's very noticeable on that song just because of how much of a ballad that song is.
Yeah.
And you see that on a lot of tracks on the album. You have a very treble present guitar parts that don't really blend well in the band mix.
That's really the complaint I'm actually going to have probably with most of these recordings.
Yeah.
And that it's not really take anything away from the playing. Like I said, great playing. I just never really liked the way that they particularly mix Rowland's guitar on these. And it's specifically his, because even on the tracks that he's not playing on, they go with a kind of different guitar tone.
Yeah, I like Night Watchman and Brave Exhibitions, I think. I mean, although they're playing the same kind of licks, I think the guitars sound better.
Yeah. And I think it was just the way that Rowland liked to play.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can criticize that heavily, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. But after you get past the poppier stuff on this album, you do have these sort of little touches of what they would become famous for.
Yeah, so like saxophone solos we're going to see throughout this album.
Well, the one song that I really think encompasses where they were going to go is Dive Position. Now, it has that dark cabaret sort of feeling to it. It's a little theatrical, and the piano mixes super well with everything.
Yes.
And it just really, really works. And even Cave's vocals, while they may not be as theatrical as what he would, become famous for and what everyone likes to hear from him, it definitely is showing that shining through of like, okay, let's mess with this formula, like the standard rock formula a bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But then you do have some songs on this album that I do feel like, unfortunately, don't really fit the bill for the record or for anything that the Birthday Party would go on to do. Particularly Friends of My World or The Voice or even Roman. I think that those three songs...
Roman was great. I disagree with you on that one.
I cannot listen
to
that song.
I love that song.
I can't stand it.
Do you like the song I Mistake Myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's like my favorite song on the album.
I think that basically the first two songs are really good, and then I think it takes kind of a lull, and then I think it picks up again at Dive Position.
I think you're absolutely right on that. Like, I think that's really where the album kind of, like, its highlights are.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything against the other songs that are on here. I just think that they're just not as memorable. And
yeah.
But for a band's first record, it's good. Like, it totally feels like a first album for Nick Cave in that it's, like, different than what he was going to do. It was maybe trying to be more accessible than what he would later do. Like, it seemed like later, he didn't really care as much. It was more about, like, trying to get, like, energy and everything out.
And trying to just create art.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's a big part of Nick Cave's career, is not so much, like, trying to create music specifically, but just create pieces of art.
Yeah. I think that this is a perfect example of maybe being hesitant to go in certain directions. Because it does have, that kind of creepy piano and all these sort of things that we would get to know and really love, but it also has all this like pop music influence and everything. And I just think it's kind of like Three Imaginary Boys, and that it's kind of a good collection of songs, but it doesn't really feel like a whole work sometimes. And it was also like, you can say that for this album it's probably more legitimate because half the album was recorded in one part of a year and then the other one was recorded the next year. So
yeah, it's
kind of expected that you're going to have some disconnect between the two pieces, and there definitely is that.
Definitely.
But, I recommend it if you can find it. It's not as common of an album.
It's pretty damn hard to find. I will say that I have a copy of it through some not so legal means, perhaps.
Not quite as legitimate as some things.
Won't go into specifics there.
Yeah. So it's a good album, though. I think if you can give it a listen and you're a Nick Cave fan, I think it's worth it just to hear what he was doing at this time. I mean, it's very, very interesting to hear Nick Cave in a more straightforward kind of approach to songs.
Yep. And if for some reason you haven't heard Shivers, please go and listen.
Yeah, that's probably the song that you've heard. I mean, let's be honest. But just give it a shot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, so it's our goth news segment. You know, I keep saying that we're going to rename this something else, and then I never do it, and then we just keep calling it goth news, which is funny.
Because it's really just random goth, whatever we found this week.
I mean, mostly. I mean, sometimes it's just stuff that we are interested in.
Yeah.
So one day I will come up with the news. I've been saying that for, I think, like 6 episodes, but here's goth news. So the one thing I want to talk about right off the bat was, and I guess this is, I mean, related to goth in a way, just because David Bowie, I always say, is related to goth. And Lady Gaga did this tribute to him. I think it was at the Grammys.
Yep.
And she played a whole bunch of his songs, basically like a medley of his material. And honestly, like, while I appreciate the effort done to it, I was so not into it. And while I don't have anything against Lady Gaga, I think she's great and that she pioneers for LGBT rights and a lot of things that, like, I love her causes, and some of her music is okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't listen to like a ton of pop music, but as far as pop music goes, it's not awful.
And as an artist, I would say that she has a lot of integrity, because she's even come out recently saying that she feels like she's kind of lost her way a little bit with music and is trying to refine it.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of one of the things that I'm going to just basically touch on with this is it felt very like Vegas-y.
Yeah.
Like, and not in the good way. Like before, I don't know if I would say like she was aggressive, but she seemed a little more out there. Right now, it seems like she's wearing a lot of like pantsuits and kind of just going with this, I don't know, like this bigger than life persona. But I'll compare to this. I feel like she's becoming more like Cher every year. And while I love some of Cher's music, I don't know, like when she was with Sonny Bono, like, you can appreciate the insanity of like the 70s pop stuff, like 60s and 70s pop stuff.
You're slightly alone in your Sonny and Cher love.
Yeah, I know. Everybody always like comments on my record collection because there's a whole bunch of like goth and then like a whole stack of Sonny and Cher. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I really feel like she's starting to go that way of like very Vegas-y. And I think that this was an example of that. Like, she sings it well, but it just was like, I don't know, it was missing something. And I thought I was crazy in thinking that, but a lot of people actually said the same kind of thing where it's like, yeah, it's good that they honored him. It's good that, that we have a reminder that he was such a great artist and like actually of the material, not just the man behind it, you know, reminder that the songs were good. But yeah, there's something, a lot of people commented on that there was something just missing about it. And
I will say, I don't feel like she was the right person for that tribute, but I will say that I feel like she did some good in doing it, and that like I had a lot of friends who didn't really know much about David Bowie who, watched the performance and then were like, oh, I didn't realize like a lot of these songs were by David Bowie, and that, that I'm actually a fan of David Bowie songs.
Yeah.
Because, for people who are perhaps less musically inclined, David Bowie is someone that you hear often because he has such an eclectic and wide range of, musical releases, but they might not necessarily associate him with who he is.
Yeah.
And so when David Bowie died, I feel like a lot of people were just like, oh, there's this person that people remember as Ziggy Stardust instead of remembering the broad span of his musical career.
Yeah. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I mean, I think it's a good thing that they did it.
Yeah.
Especially at the Grammys. But this, I don't know. There's something strange about it. Maybe I'm just not seeing what it was trying to do, or maybe I'm missing something. But it just didn't do it for me. But I think it's a
Fair
great
enough.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a lot of respect for it, but
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of like love for it.
I get it. Like, honestly, I don't feel compelled to watch it again.
Yeah.
But, it was a nice gesture.
Yeah. And then what else do we have?
Okay. Well, so we also have Peter Murphy from Bauhaus and Skinny Puppy's Nivek Ogre are to star in a horror film. And apparently it's going to begin filming later this year. And it's described as an erotic, violent fever, dream driven by mood, music, and atmosphere. I'm very curious to see how that goes. The movie's called Black Glove Killer. It's by Canadian composer / film director Chris Alexander. You know, I'm not really familiar with his work, to be honest with you. But I just want to see something with Peter Murphy and, Nivek Ogre in it.
What's so funny is that we actually had this news story, I think, like, months ago. It's probably like one of the first few episodes we did.
We did.
But then Ogre wasn't on it. And
and it was almost more of a rumor than a confirmed thing.
Yeah, and then so I think that now, since it's supposed to be like an erotic thriller, I'm just like, oh man! As soon as you showed me, you sent me the link for the article.
Yep.
I was like, it's gonna be porno. I was like, it's totally gonna be like a well shot, artistic softcore porn. That's seriously what it sounds like. But I hope it's more than that. But usually whenever they say an erotic thriller,
I don't know. That just makes me think of exploitation films from the 70s and stuff. I know
that's exactly what it probably will be like.
Yeah. And yes, those things do border on being pornos, but I associate them more with campy B-movie funniness than anything else. So, I don't know. It could turn out to be a cool little thing, for novelty's sake. Or, maybe it'll turn out to be something really cool. I don't know.
Yeah. We're definitely going to watch it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, just something to remind you guys of. And then lastly, I guess this kind of falls in the line of retouching on things we talked about before. But we had mentioned that the Cult were recording a new album and going on tour. And that new album is called Hidden City, but it was just released recently on February 5th. So the album is officially out. I haven't given it a listen yet, so I can't really comment on whether or not I would recommend it to people. But if you are a fan of the Cult or Southern Death Cult, which is the band that became the Cult.
I actually really like Southern Death Cult.
Yeah. Perhaps you guys might want to check that out. Definitely just wanted to let you guys know about it at least. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then Wayne Hussey.
Wayne Hussey also has a solo record that he just released. So, for those of you guys who are Mission UK fans or just Wayne Hussey fans.
Yeah, Wayne Hussey fans.
Yeah, he's got a new album out. Again, haven't listened to it yet, but I love Wayne Hussey and I love The Mission, so chances are that I'll probably get something out of it, but it might not be for everyone.
Yep.
So that's Gothic News.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the birthday party. Well, okay, so this is a weird one. So instead of 1980, the band The Boys Next Door released the album The Birthday Party, but then it was later reissued under the band The Birthday Party, which is what they renamed themselves. So technically this is the second album by The Boys Next Door, but it's really
but if you want to get really technical, these are all albums by The Birthday Party.
Yeah. So also, just in case anybody's wondering if we're skipping over it or not, we do know that there was the release of the Hee Haw EP, but we usually don't cover EPs anyway.
Yeah.
Unless it's something really big. And yeah, the Hee Haw EP did bring out some of that more aggressive sound.
It did.
But this just expands upon it in so many similar ways.
And this album has actually been released with the songs from Hee Haw before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a very different album.
Yes. Very, very different from the last album. So we definitely have a shift away from kind of the very poppy and dramatic sounding songs of the last album, and we have much more of a shift to kind of a creepy, darker feeling album. Mm-hmm. Something that I think a lot of goth people would definitely appreciate and would definitely influence a lot of goth bands.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think one of the things that's important to mention is that this is basically the sound or the framework of what we're going to get for the next releases of The Birthday Party.
Yeah.
And they're very similar to this sound.
Yep.
And they do their own little different things. Each album does its own little twist on it. But it is very similar to this sort of sound. It's very abrasive.
It's almost kind of like a really creepy, jazz, rockabilly, horror soundtrack.
That actually isn't that far off.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is amalgamation of a whole bunch of different sounds. And a lot of different instruments being used in different ways, and actually piano, instead of like having basic piano tracks, you have like organ tracks or the saxophone, but they also do like a lot of really, really reverby and echoey vocals and a lot of things that they weren't necessarily pushing on last album.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to see like a lot of diminished chords used like in these songs, so they immediately it's going to give them a darker feeling.
Yeah.
Whereas the last album would stick to very straight diatonic major or minor keys.
Yeah. Starting right off the bat, the opener, Mr. Clarinet, I think it's a totally awesome opener.
Yeah, it's a really cool song. It's got a really cool like garage rocky rockabilly kind of vibe to it. But
yeah, actually I know this is really, I don't know if it's super obscure, but I definitely think a lot of people have not heard this song. But what actually the keyboard sound on this, the organ sound on here, it really reminds me of is there's this band called 1313 Mockingbird Lane, and I think they only have like 2 songs they ever released, but the keyboard for My Hearse is Double Park.
Yep.
Like I said, it's kind of an obscure song, but it totally reminds me of that. And also the tone and everything. Like, this is a very theatrical, very creepy song. And the thing that it really establishes, right off the bat, and I think it does a really good job, is that you have a very sporadic or very loose feeling vocal line. And with the first album, you didn't really have that as much. Maybe it was a little looser than, say, like a regular singer. But for this, you really have that kind of Nick Cave feel where it almost feels like he's kind of sauntering or kind of just more emotionally going through the song.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you hear that all over the place. On Hats Gone Wrong, or the Guilt Parade, on the Red Clock. It all has a very loose feeling. And I think right from the beginning, Mr. Clarinet really has that emphasis on that. Like, okay, this is not the first album where right off the bat it's like pop.
Yeah. No, I think this song really sets the stage for what this album is going to be. It's a very good opening song, and it really defines kind of the sound that they're going for on this album.
Unfortunately, with some of this, it doesn't hit me quite as hard as the opener does. I mean, even just Hats on Wrong, I know we're going to disagree on this, but I actually really like the bass sound on that song. It's like really chunky.
I think it's the worst bass sound of all times. There's no bass in it. It's all treble.
I just really like it. I like the way it sounds.
I will say it's a really good bass part. The bass part itself is really well written, but I can't stand the mixing for the bass.
I love it. It's so good. I think it's amazing. And even for that, I mean,
I still think it's a great song.
Yeah.
So
the guitar is all over the place. This is definitely where Rowland Howard's guitar, it definitely has that super defined sound that people are familiar with, where it's just like an insane sort of, they'll be saying, like, they may have like a basic guitar line recorded, but then all of a sudden there's just like clanging noise or just strings or just like open notes, and you just never know what's gonna be on the next song, Yeah. I think on Hats on Wrong, like, that's definitely emphasized just how crazy this stuff is getting.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Actually, for me, like, the first 3 tracks in particular, I feel like are really good opening songs. I don't really care for Guilt Parade so much, and Riddle House is okay.
I don't like Riddle House at all.
Riddle House doesn't bother me, but I don't think it's as strong as Mr. Clarinet, Hats on Wrong, or The Hair Shirt. And I also think it's funny that those songs were written by the 2 that I just said I don't like are written by Rowland Howard.
You love Shivers so much.
I know, I do. This doesn't sound anything like Shivers, though.
Well, they're not really going to have anything that sounds like Shivers from now on.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good album. It falls in a little bit of that in-between sort of thing. And not saying that, like, I don't think it has basically any resemblance to the first album.
No,
I really
not
don't.
at all.
But I think that while it establishes the sound that we're going to see for the birthday party, I just don't think it does it as well as the next album, which is going to be Prayers on Fire. And that's maybe why it's a little bit of a forgotten album.
I sort of agree with you. I do think that the next album will do it better, but I don't feel like this album is that much of a failure, because, to be honest with you, the album that comes after Prayers on Fire, I think, is horrible.
I don't agree with that, but we'll get to that. I do like a lot of the stuff that's going on here, and I think a lot of it, the stuff that's good is amazing. Like,
I agree.
But the stuff that's okay is just okay. While I do like the energy that is on this album, it's honestly, compared to a lot of the modern stuff that comes out, there's no comparison. I mean, this album feels very very energetic and very, I don't know, I hate this word, but very real, you know?
No, definitely. And I almost kind of feel like they created a new kind of sound for like dark music that hadn't really existed at this point. They had this really kind of campy, creepy, horror influenced jazz and bass song structure that fits in enough with the goth culture that, you know, it can be part of, you know, goth set lists and stuff like that, or, you know, playlists. It definitely doesn't sound like any goth record we'd heard up to this point. And it's not a goth record, technically.
Yeah, more in line with post-punk.
Yeah.
But, I mean, one of the things I want to address about that, especially with this one, because this is when In the Flat Field is going to come out and everything. So I think that it's really important to mention here, this is really when we see a lot of actual goth bands starting to come out. So you have Bauhaus comes out this same year, and I know most people will label this as post-punk, and that's really what they're going for. That's the energy that they're trying to go for. They're not, while they do have a theatrical element that is usually in gothic music, it's a totally different feeling, and I understand that. But if you can't draw comparisons to In the Flat Field, which came out the same year, and this album in terms of sound and the way guitar is handled, the way vocals are handled, they have similar elements. And while I will agree that, you know, maybe this one doesn't fit in as well, especially with the lyrical themes, while they are creepy and eerie, it's just not quite what Bauhaus or a lot of other bands were doing.
No, and that's why I do feel like they are a separate thing. They're both avant-garde in their own kind of different ways. Just like we're gonna see Bauhaus like do lots of things with like delay effects and kind of very like syncopated, rhythm-oriented experimentation, whereas Nick Cave is going to pursue like a more instrument-based experimentation.
Well, I don't know. It's like if we're actually going to compare like Bauhaus to the Birthday Party or Nick Cave, it's funny because Nick Cave gets like less poppy as time goes on, and then maybe like a little bit more like accessible.
Yeah,
it's really weird because he kind of found that like medium point, and Bauhaus goes from like really unaccessible to like she's in parties.
Yeah,
so it's a little weird, but I thought I would bring that up if people are wondering kind of how this compares to some of the other stuff that's coming out that maybe is a little more popular. I think there's a lot of similarities to In the Flat Field, which came out around this time. But listen for yourself.
I would say maybe in the mixing, but to me, like the song structures themselves don't really resemble anything like them.
Yeah. They don't.
Yeah.
But I think this is an okay album. The good songs are really good. Honestly, the songs that I don't like that much, I wouldn't listen to again.
See, songs I don't like this much on this album, I don't dislike as strongly as I dislike some of the songs on Door Door. For me, I think I give this album a slightly better rating than you do. You know, it's not their best album, but I feel like it is a solid album. And yes, there are some tracks on it that are not as good as others, but for me, they don't really detract from the album.
Okay. Yeah. We're not really agreeing that much on these albums.
When do we ever agree?
That's true. Okay, so that's The Birthday Party, or the album The Birthday Party.
Yes.
By the Boys Next Door / The Birthday Party. Okay, so now we're on to Prayers on Fire. This one was released in 1981.
Yes, so this is the second or third album by The Birthday Party, depending on how you look at it.
Well, it could technically be the first if you're looking at it from that the Birthday Party album was by the...
This is true.
Yeah.
So it could be the first, second, or third. But for the sake of this podcast, this is the third album.
Yeah. So it's released in 1981. And Prayers on Fire is really where a lot of people feel the band came into its own. In fact, this is... I mean, it's really hard to say. This might be their most popular album. I know that Junkyard is really popular, especially with the re-release where it has release of bats and everything like that. But I think as an album, I'm pretty sure that Prayers on Fire is the most popular and most available one that they had ever released.
Yeah, it's certainly the album that you're going to see show up in record stores a lot more than other albums by The Birthday Party.
Yeah, and it also had like a ton of re-releases and a lot of, I don't know, it's a
very quintessential Birthday Party album.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And so with this one, I actually really enjoy this one. And the reason is with the first album, The Door, we saw the band kind of barely experimenting with a more aggressive sound. Maybe a little bit creepy, but not really aggressive.
Yeah, I would say the first album is a good album, or at least a decent album, but it's definitely not the Birthday Party sound.
Yeah, and then when you get to the Birthday Party, we have a more aggressive sound, less to almost none of that pop sort of stuff they're doing. A little spotty for me. I think the album's good, but probably not as good as you think it is. I think when we get to this album, we definitely have a lot more aggression, a lot more theatrical sound.
Definitely more experimental.
Yeah, and I think it really works. It definitely seems like they weren't really restrained by that formula that they maybe were following a little bit more earlier in their career. And I think it worked so well for a lot of this material.
There's some songs on this album that I just flat out don't like, but I have to praise this album for its boldness. This is an album that literally spits in the face of music critics and just does whatever it wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I really have to commend them for that. And in spite of really having no ties to needing to release songs that are radio friendly or single worthy necessarily, they release an album that has songs that are really good.
Yeah. Just starting off this album, you have Zoo Music Girl, and I really, really like the sound of this, and it has super aggressive vocals, almost yelling.
Really? You like that song?
I really like the song.
I fucking hate this song.
I love it
so
I love it.
much.
And
this song almost made me hate this album until I continued listening to it.
I love this song.
It's like the one song in this album that I can't back in
I love
any way.
it. I think it's great. I'll explain why it's great. It has this very aggressive vocals. In fact, it basically sets off what the tone of the album is going to be. It's almost yelling. Nick Cave's like yelling at you or preaching these vocals to you. Like as soon as he's done singing another vocal will come in. He's like, I will go here, I will go there, and everyone will be around me, and everyone, just layers upon layers of sounds, and I think it works so well.
See, I felt like this song didn't work because there's no musical structure to the song at all except for the rhythm. It's literally the drums are the only thing that's holding this song together musically, and everything else is complete experimentation.
That's what I like. I mean, I just think that works. They just went out on a limb in it. Yeah, I could see it being it's a little messy, but a lot of the songs I hear are kind of messy, and that's why
but to me, this one is like the one that sticks out to me.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. So about Cry, the second track. So Cry, this again kind of cements. I think these first two songs really cement how busy of an album this is. In that, a lot of it is just very busy, and basically all the instruments are doing something all of the time on every song.
For me, it still has just as much craziness to me as Zoo Music Girl does, but it has a little more song structure. And so for me, Cry it's a great song. I love it. And really, like the next 2-3 songs, I really into this album. A song like Capers, is such a weird vocal, but I think it works.
Yeah, the guitar is really awesome. It's creepy. It's spooky, and it has some weird ass vocals.
Very weird vocals.
The Cookie Monster vocals. It's really weird, but it works. And of course, the most popular song off this album, Nick the Stripper.
Yeah.
And of course, it's very theatrical, very cabaret, obviously very strippery sounding. If that's even a term. You
could picture Nick Cave parading around stage and maybe pulling an article of clothing off.
Is that what you're imagining?
Yeah.
I think what it has is this song has a little bit of I hate this word so much, but I can't think of another synonym right now. It has a little bit of a swagger to it.
Oh, I know what you're looking for. It's not swagger.
Yeah.
It's swing. This song swings.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. So it's an amazing song.
Yeah. No, it's a great song. I love Nick the Stripper, but unfortunately the song that comes after it, Ho Ho, while I don't find it to be very abrasive, I just find it to be kind of boring.
Yeah, and that could also be said for the song after that too. I just never really connected with it, but for something like a Dead song, which is a very strange song, it's a very animated, very messy sounding, like a lot of the other stuff.
But I love that song.
Yeah, that song is really good, and I think it may be, Ho Ho, or it just doesn't stand out as much from the other ones.
Yeah.
Because it's not quite as obtuse of a song.
Yeah.
You even have like Dull Day, which I think is a great song. Great song. It has a really cool vocal line, and the way the piano and the guitar play off each other is really awesome. Like the piano plays a part, and then basically the guitar does like an accent or basically like a play back to it. So
Dull Day is definitely it's a really cool call and response between the piano and guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those sort of things are what you look for the entire album. Yep. But unfortunately, songs like Ho Ho or I just don't really have it.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. We don't normally talk about bonus tracks, but I'll be honest and say that this is one album whose bonus tracks I really wish were on it. Yeah. Because I actually really like Blundertown and Kathy's Kisses. Mm-hmm. I thought those were really great songs that could have probably replaced Ho Ho and Figure of Fun.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, which is funny. Oh, by the way, Just You and Me, really good song.
Yep.
Again, definitely playing off the theatrical sort of thing with this. And Prayers on Fire, like, I just think it's a really good album. It really cemented the sort of, I want to say almost like the legacy of the Birthday Party. When people come back to this band, a lot of songs that they're going to identify with or be really shocked by are going to be from this album. And that's not to say, Junkyard, the next album, doesn't have its moments where people are like, oh my gosh. But I feel like people find this album first and they really get into the Birthday Party. Whereas if you're listening to Door Door or you listen to the Birthday Party album, it just doesn't have that same kind of draw. This is
a much bolder album than the Birthday Party, the album.
Yeah.
However, I don't know. For me, it has just as much draw, but maybe that's a personal thing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about this one. Maybe it's just the aggression on it or the strange, the experimentation goes way off in this one.
Yeah.
And I just like that. But
I do too.
I guess, teach your own.
Yeah.
But obviously I recommend Prayers on Fire.
Oh, I definitely agree.
And yeah, just give it a listen. You'll probably, if you like kind of off-kilter post-punk music that is somewhat theatrical and has a cabaret sort of feel, then this is the album.
Yeah. And I think that if you're familiar with the Nick Cave legacy, I think that this album will appeal to you in general.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think most people are probably more familiar with his Bad Seeds work. And
even Grinderman too.
Yeah. But this album is definitely, while it's not quite the same thing, it's reminiscent of the kind of risks he would take on those albums.
Yeah, definitely. So, Prayers on Fire, I recommend it.
I agree.
All right, so now we're on to Junkyard.
Yeah. So, Junkyard is the final album by the Birthday Party.
I mean, there's technically another release after this, but this is basically the last official album. The other one would just be like a compilation of things. And
this is the last studio album released by the Birthday Party.
Yeah, and so for this one, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I will say, if you're looking at this structurally and how much experimentation was done on the other ones, I can see how a lot of people think this was a step back for them. But I actually think that this works for what they were trying to do. It's extremely aggressive. I mean, it almost borders on just being straight punk rock instead of being post-punk.
I don't even know if you could call it punk because it would have to be music to be called punk.
I don't know. Look, I know you're not a fan of this album, and I know that we'll disagree on this one, but I think that this album actually has a lot of things going for it. They just really let themselves go on this one.
I'll agree with that.
Look, I know it's really aggressive, and a lot of the stuff like saxophone and stuff really isn't as present on this album as it was before, and the cabaret kind of thing is
just out the door.
It's less pronounced, I'll put it that way.
There's one song in the album.
But I mean, the thing that this album is really excelling in is basically just an explosion of energy.
I'll give you that. If I can commend this album for anything, it is its ability to be bold and to be daring and to do things that bands were afraid to do, to push the limitations of music in a way which not many bands were comfortable with doing and were afraid would ruin their careers. And the Birthday Party proved that you could release an album like this and not destroy your career, in fact, perhaps propel it.
Yeah, and that's what I think this album excels in. And I know that you have a big problem with the way that this album is structured, the music and everything. And I'll let you say your part about what you think this album maybe doesn't succeed in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just get it out of the way. You know, I don't want to offend anybody who like really enjoys this album. Like I said, I commend it on its boldness and its pushing the limitations of music. But for me, this album is really repetitive sounding, and a lot of the songs just kind of sound like they blend together, even though, you know, they're really, you know, aggressive songs. There's not like a hard distinction between a lot of the songs for me. And so for me, that was, you know, something I would have liked to see done better on this album. There are some songs that I do like on this album. I liked Dead Joe and Kiss Me Black a lot.
Kiss Me Black is a great song.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also like the song Junkyard, and my favorite song on the album is 6-Inch Gold Blade, because for me that represents perhaps maybe something a little bit closer to the last two albums.
I would actually agree with you. You know, I may not agree with a lot of what you think of this album.
Yeah.
I will have to agree that 6-Inch Gold Blade, I think, is the strongest song on this album, and it is definitely the thing that's most closely aligned to Prayers on Fire.
Yeah.
And like I said, I love Prayers on Fire.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing album. Do I think that this one's a step back? Not necessarily. I mean, if you look at it, this album is pretty much critically acclaimed by every music journalist, everybody. And I get their argument saying like, oh, it's a brash attempt to burst out of a bubble, like, you know, and I get that. But the thing is, especially when reviewing all these albums, you know, one after another, I mean, I really feel like Prayers on Fire was more of a kind of strike out against what music was at the time. And that's just because it's so unique. Like this, I hate to say it, while this album is very aggressive and I really do enjoy everything that they do with it, it's just a little bit more generic, if that makes sense.
I completely agree. And that's my biggest criticism of this album. It's not that it's too abrasive or that it's too weird. It's just that there's not enough differentiation between songs for me. Like every song kind of sounds similar to me. And, you know, I mentioned the songs that really stand out to me. And, you know, a song that a lot of people will probably associate with this album is Release the Bats, which is technically not on the record.
Yeah.
I'll let you explain that one.
Yeah, so Release the Bats was actually released as a single right around the time that Prayers on Fire was released. And now whenever you buy Junkyard on CD or, you know, like you see anything, I think even maybe Spotify or something has it associated with the album. So a lot of people associate Junkyard with that song, but it actually wasn't released on this album, and it actually wasn't even released in the same year as it. As far as I can tell, it was released in the same year as Prayers on Fire, and that's actually, I mean, if you listen to it, that's actually the sound I feel it's closely associated with.
Yeah.
But Release the Bats is definitely one of the most popular songs ever released.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
You know, if it had been released on this album, I think it would have been to its benefit.
Yeah. I think Junkyard, for me, it's a good album. I know that you kind of disagree. I think, you know, you don't quite see it the same way.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely see what they were trying to do. And I think that what they did, or what they were trying to do, they did successfully. And they made a very aggressive, almost a little bit over the top album that, you know, they just got to express themselves on.
Yeah.
And while, yeah, it's not pushing the boundaries of music like some of their earlier stuff was, and that's okay. Like, I think for what this is, you know, it's fine.
I still feel like this album is definitely pushing the boundaries. I think that they probably did succeed in accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish with this album. However, do I want to put this record on when I'm driving or sitting at home? Not really, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like this album probably, actually, well, I guess a lot more than you do because you're not a big fan of it. But, like, yeah, it's not my first choice for the birthday party. And I will say this, I do actually like it better than the birthday party album, because I feel like that album's a little bit spotty. At least this one is consistent in what it's trying to do.
Really? You like this better than the birthday party album?
I think it just has a little bit.
I so disagree with you on that.
Really? I mean, I don't know. There's something about it. Junkyard's like, it's a classic. Like,
if you say so, man.
Yeah, but I would definitely put Prayers on Fire on above both those. So I'll say that.
All right.
But yeah, there's some other stuff that was done by the birthday party. They did a live album, and they did like one release after this. I think it was like 2 EPs that were compiled. But while those are good, we just kind of really want to focus on the albums because there is quite a bit of distinction between these. They basically, while they all don't have their, like a very specific identity between them, like I would say Door Door is, like I said, like it kind of has a weird identity.
But it has its own identity, definitely.
Yeah, and the birthday party was kind of moving towards what Prayers on Fire was going to do. And
like Prayers on Fire, I feel like really hits the nail on the head.
I feel like that's a perfect blend of what they were doing. And Junkyard is obviously the aggressive one. Like,
yeah.
I think each album did something different. And I think that's what they were trying to do. Like, I think that's what the birthday party was all about. And that's definitely what Nick Cave is about.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And Rowland Howard, while I said I don't necessarily like his guitar tone throughout most of these albums, he's a good freaking guitarist and he's a great songwriter. So.
Yeah, and he plays lots of interesting parts.
So that's pretty much what I can say about Junkyard and the birthday party is that it's a very interesting experiment in music. And if we ever cover Nick Cave at some point, we're going to see that this kind of mentality, trying to push yourself and trying to do something different with your music is what he's all about.
Yeah, that's definitely his MO.
So, do you have any final words on Junkyard?
I'm probably not the best person to recommend this. I would say check it out. If you're a Nick Cave fan or, a birthday party fan in particular, I think it's worth listening to because this album might appeal to you. This might, be something that you were looking for or that you might have missed. I wouldn't want to make anyone shy away from this album simply because it doesn't fit my personal taste. There's lots of great songwriters, who don't appeal to everybody. And I think that's comes with the territory of doing something like what Nick Cave does, where you're pushing the boundaries of music and experimenting. So, if anything, I will say this album is a very unique album. And it might not be for me, but it might be for you. So check it out.
Go listen to Junkyard. So, all right. So this has been GothCast episode 22. And I am Dr. Sanders.
And I'm Robbie Gore. So, as per usual, we got to plug our social media. So we have an Instagram, which is just GothCast. We have a Facebook page, which is GothCast. We have a YouTube channel, which is GothCast Space Video. We have a website, which is gothcastradio.com. No www, because why would we do that? Mm-hmm. And of course, you can always reach us at our email, which is gothcastradio@gmail.com. And we are happy to respond on any of these formats or mediums. We gladly accept, recommendations, we're happy to respond to comments, questions, and, anything you guys have to say, we're here to listen to. So reach out. And if you can, it'd be awesome if you guys subscribe or leave a review.
On iTunes, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, that's social media for us.
Yep. Okay. Stay spooky.